Okay, now I got it. Now this is working. Okay, great. This is all going to get cut out anyways. Okay, so today's topic, today's workshop is going to be less lecture style than it was before, because I feel like the other stuff was very procedural. You know, you're kind of just like when you're using VQGAN, for example, right? It's you're reading some instructions, you're typing some things in, and then you're more or less waiting for it to do its thing. As long as you can follow step 1, step 2, step 3, you're going to be mostly fine, and you're not going to mess up anything totally vital to your life, like you can with keys and crypto security and all that kind of stuff, which is the topic of today's workshop, which I'm loosely calling creating a crypto resurrection plan. And I changed it from what it was before. It was something like, it's even different on the event on Discord. It says plotting a crypto resurrection plan. I was trying to find the right verb, but anyways, resurrection is like a very biblical word almost. And I'm kind of taking this angle of these workshops should have some kind of like fun Mochi twist to it. 1, 2, I feel like it would be interesting to kind of do Web3 topics in a way that nobody else is doing them. Because I feel like all the content out there is pretty similar. You know, it's like somebody breaking something down technically, or somebody just really, really dumbing it down to the point where it's just offensive to read. For me, at least, I don't know. Like there's no in between like engaging content for me as somebody who like is interested in crypto, but probably knows more than the average person. So I'm thinking like, what kind of stuff can I do that's like weird and strange and unique to both what I know and what Mochi can give and what Mochi likes. And Mochi seems to have a streak of esotericism in it and mysticism. So, why not think about recovery through a magical lens? Isn't that fun? Like, so basically, if you're looking at this thing right now, it's kind of, there's a lot of colors that don't really make sense. And that's because they don't make sense yet. I'm trying to basically create something that looks like a periodic table. Because what I want to do is think about recovery and talk about a recovery plan through the lens of alchemy. I take like an alchemical approach, which is kind of like, what are the elements that, I don't know, turn frog piss into gold or something. Not that has anything to do with security, right? But, maybe we can take an approach to constructing a security plan that works for us individually. If we were given elemental building blocks, that was kind of what I was thinking, right? Rather than me sitting here and giving you exactly what I do, which is terrible for my own security because you know exactly how my security system works. And possibly maybe doesn't even work for you. Maybe you've got a totally different setup. Like there's no way we all have the same stuff. So I can kind of just give you some of the elements that I think through and that I have in my system. And then in maybe a later session, we can go through how to actually construct something that is reasonably secure. Because there are going to be trade-offs in any system that you create. You might have heard of this trade-off between kind of like convenience and ease of access and security, these kinds of things. You're often sacrificing something in exchange for something else. And there's like the crypto trilemma with, decentralization, all that kind of stuff. It's not super applicable to this, but, they're helpful frameworks for us to think through. I think once I have more time with this, I'll have an idea of how to kind of more meaningfully structure and color these things. But for now, I've just colored things according to what I feel belongs together. And there's no sensible way to kind of read this yet. So I'll just walk you through it verbally. And hopefully when we come back to this, it'll be in a more cleaned up shape where I'll have descriptors and stuff for what we're looking at. But basically here on the left side, we have a set of considerations. So things that I think we should think about before we even get into the security conversation or why we're even having a conversation about security. And it's not fully comprehensive. It's just the things that came to mind today. I apologize for not having more on here. It wasn't until today that I could actually work on this, but we'll develop it over time. On the right side, I have different elemental kind of like, elements really of that might make up all of the things that you have that you want to secure, at least from a crypto standpoint. And even, from a Web3 identity standpoint, and even creeping down into Web2 a bit. So things that you're going to want to think about securing. It's, again, not fully comprehensive, but maybe has a lot of things that you'll recognize, and then also things that maybe you don't, or maybe you don't have in your current setup. So that'll be something we go through. And then the last thing will be this box here at the bottom. Or this set of 9 boxes at the bottom that are all the same kind of blue-purple gradient. And the way that you read it is actually left to right first and then down a level. So you sequentially think about it left to right. And then once you finish a row, you go down a row. And I didn't mark that, apologize. But I will mark that for the next time. And this is kind of like a set of steps to go through once you're actually at the point where you've got a good record and account of everything that you're trying to secure, and then what you do to kind of implement a security system next. And that'll be the topic of maybe a second workshop, or possibly even a third. We'll see how far we get today. But does that kind of make sense as like a high level overview? It's maybe, again, it's not super clear from just looking at it, but hopefully it'll start to make sense. So, okay, we'll start on the left side then. So why are we thinking about security, or why does security seemingly matter more in the context of crypto or Web3 and this strange new internet that we're entering? Well, what this space is kind of doing now is it's taking technologies that have underpinned the functioning of the internet since it was just people sending emails back and forth. But it's brought these kinds of things that have been just like under the surface for some time up to this, now up to kind of like user experience level with tokens and wallets and stuff. And now people are experimenting with those things, and not only experimenting with them, but taking custody and ownership over the security over those things, which is interesting and cool because it gives us a lot of fun things that we can play with using tokens and stuff and wallets. And you can have your own money, and every wallet is its own bank account, really. That's what the whole blockchain experiment is about. But also it comes with a set of risks and considerations that I think you need to keep in mind, because you are fundamentally playing with, what is not just bank level technology, like security technology, crypto technology, but kind of like state weaponry technology. Like crypto has a long, and the NSA like history, like this is like war tech. Crypto was used to encrypt messages, private key, public key infrastructure, all this kind of stuff is like wartime technology and is used by like real actual spies and people encoding weaponry, kind of like, codes and that kind of stuff. So, now we have government defense level technology at the fingertips of civilians. And that's not my quote. I think that's a Gupta quote. But it's equally dangerous as it is kind of like a new form of liberation for us in what we can do with the tech. So that's kind of like I guess I would say is like the context setting for why the backdrop in which we are playing with Web3 tools to like do fun little things like token gating and stuff. But, at its core, we're talking about a system of account that uses cryptography to manage the veracity and validity of those accounts on a global scale, such that it allows you to, really be your own bank, which is totally revolutionary. But if you're going to be your own bank, you have to kind of think about security, on a bank level. You can't be thinking about security on a consumer level, because we don't really exist anymore in a situation where you forget your password. You can just send an email and they'll get back to you. You just click a link and password recovery and all that kind of stuff. That's not the space we work in anymore. And even more than that, maybe I'm preaching to the choir here. I think you guys know all this stuff, but even more than that, I don't know, and maybe you guys could actually share, because I don't want to this to be a total one way. I prefer this to be free flowing today. I don't know that people have really thought about what would happen if you just fell off the face of the earth tomorrow. How would, your parents or your significant other or your brother or sister get access to your crypto? Have you guys thought about these things?
Yeah, I only just thought about it in the past year, because my mom is actually, there was a young man whose family she was close to. She was friends with his mom and she knew him well, and he passed away. And they only realized way after he had passed that he had a huge number of I think Safe Moon, because his sister somehow knew. Mm-hmm. And my mom just texted me asking me what this was. She is somewhat familiar with crypto, not really. And they have no way to access it, but they know that it's worth something. And that was the first time I ever thought about it. Oh my God, what do I do?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Alex, how about yourself?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it, and I don't think I've put in place any reasonably decent solution for it. So, I definitely have some information, but it's also the same thing as far as how much do you document, and that becomes a security risk in itself. If that's going to be accessible by other people, you don't know who would get to that information.
Yeah.
Even if it's in a safe or whatever. So that's something I've sort of struggled to wrap my head around the best approach. It's part of the reason why I wanted to join this today.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was the same way. Just maybe less than a year ago, actually, when this was first came to mind. It was actually actually a little bit over a year ago. It was when I was getting my motorcycle back in the end of 2020. And I was talking to Maggie Ford, who is Maggie number one, in case you haven't heard that yet, Niche. Maggie number two was here earlier, but I think she had to dip out or something. But Maggie number one is very risk conscious, and she yelled at me basically, and she was just like, Gabe, before you step foot anywhere near that bike, you need to get a will made, and you need to make sure that you have a recovery plan for your crypto. She's like, I know you have crypto, and you can't be dumb about this. People die on bikes. It's not just, it's not fun and games. You have to think about your family and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was like, God damn it, you're right, Maggie Ford. She was totally right. Yeah. And this is still, before crypto was going really crazy, but I don't remember what it was, but it was well enough that I decided to buy a bike at that point in time. And I'd never really thought about, forget about crypto for a second. I never even really thought about how many identities I have, just digital identities, Web 2 identities, right? So how many email accounts you have just on Gmail, right? And then if you're weird and you think that one day you're going to need it, like me, you have some Proton Mail accounts, right? And then not only that, you have your social accounts, and you don't just have your one social account. You have your burner account. You have your account that follows all the alts in case you're trying to figure out what's going on the other side, so your liberal friends don't get pissed at you for following a Republican or something like that. You know, like you have all of these like identities that are just strewn across all of these services, and not all of them are really that important. Some of them are because they link up to your bank account. They link up to, they have your. Some of them are just your email addresses. Some of them link up to your social identity, which, if you have a ton of followers, is an asset for you, right? For me, it's not. I have I have like 200 followers, or like 500 followers, and so it's not really an asset for me. But it could one day be. But if you're an influencer, you got 10K followers or something, somebody gets a hold of your account, it's a wrap. Like that's a moneymaker for you. You haven't you're if you're at that level, you're making money maybe by tweeting all day or sharing Instagram posts. So our identity exists at multiple different layers, and that's just Web 2. Web 3 is a whole other beast. Because like I said, that recovery layer doesn't exist. So absent having one ready-made for you, or having the money to kind of go out there and like have somebody think about it for you, like, have your accountant figure out your security plan, your lawyer, and like, be able to draw up wills and trusts and all that kind of stuff. You got to make something for yourself. And, that's kind of like, that's kind of it. So I think we kind of understand, those kinds of things that we have to think about. The first question obviously being the one about like, if your family had to get to it, how would they do that? And it's not super easy to explain, even to a crypto person who knows how to use this stuff, how to do certain things. If I had to ask you what the steps were to recovering a seed phrase on your MetaMask account, this is probably something you've done before, but if I had to ask you to describe it for me right now, could you do it? Exactly to a T for somebody who has never done that before.
Yeah, for sure. Hard to explain.
Yeah. It's something that you could, if you had your seed phrase in front of you, you can go and figure out and do. But for the average person who's never dealt with a seed phrase, never downloaded that, that plugin, and never like done the like, hey, you're never supposed to share the seed phrase. God forbid, they're like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Could you like do this for me? And then next thing you know, your money's stolen by Uncle Jim or the neighbor across the street who's a little bit more, crypto savvy and not so savory. So things like that, you have to kind of teach in a way. And I understand the point that you brought up, Alex, which is, it becomes a security risk the second you start writing things down. But there are ways to separate out the risks so that you mitigate it, so that everything's not all in one place. We won't go into that today. That's part of like actually the construction of it. We'll just kind of go through a little bit more of the high level thinking, and we'll think about it, and then we'll maybe come back and like try to do that construction. So, how does your family get to it? That's one consideration. So that's what I would call like an access consideration, like ease of access. That's why it's up here in blue next to all the other access ones. The other access ones that I would say are important to think about are, this topic of this idea of cold storage. Right. You guys have probably heard this topic. And I hear people talk about this term often, and I often hear it conflated with just a hardware wallet, having a hardware wallet. Like people conflate, oh, I have a hardware wallet, that is cold storage, but that's not necessarily the case, right? Cold storage is like that's sitting somewhere and you're not touching it unless in case of emergency. That's like buried in a bunker somewhere. It's in a safety deposit box or whatever. The idea of it being cold is that it's not something you're going to access on any regular basis. Regularity is the defining factor of what is cold and what is hot. A hot wallet is something that you're going to be using, getting money in and out, that kind of thing. So a question is, how cold should the cold storage be? And that's a risk determination. That's a personal risk determination that you have to think about when it comes to your money. If you're going to be socking away any significant portion of your money, if in case of emergency, how difficult is it for you going to be for you to go and access it? How many hoops do you have to jump through to get to it? And not only that, the person who may be the person that you trust to go get it for you, in case you're incapacitated, which I've personally dealt with. You know, I had a friend who was sick in the hospital who, just was not there anymore. And he didn't do any of this stuff. And I don't know what happened to it, but he was a multi-millionaire with crypto. He started the fund with a couple, he helped manage a fund for some friends of mine and families. And, he made a lot of money doing it. And I don't know what happened to it. To this day, I don't know what happened to it. I haven't asked because it feels weird to ask about, but he was incapacitated. He hadn't passed away yet. But he just wasn't there anymore. And, I don't know. But, this is something to think about, right? It's, if you can't get to it, somebody else should be able to get to it. And what are the hoops they got to jump through to get to those things? How far away is it going to be? How cold is it? Is it like a couple states away cold? Is it like in your local bank's safety deposit cold? Is it buried in a bunker somewhere in Siberia cold? That's something you have to think about when you're thinking about your things. Another way to think about it is, so you can make it, if you're weird like me, or, you're like the Ready Player One person, you make a treasure hunt or something. You could stick it all over the metaverse or whatever. That's another way to make it cold, but it's something you got to think about. How hard do you want to make it for yourself? So that's another access thing. The trade-off, of course, being convenience. So the third thing that I would say is worth considering is it kind of has to do with this cold storage thing, but your seed phrase and your private key, really, that's everything, right? If somebody has that, they have the money in the wallet. There's nothing you can do about it. So what do you do about storing it, right? Do you store it all together? Do you break up the words and put them in different places? How do you do that? How do you go about doing that? How do you go about reconstructing it in case you do that, right? So you break off half of the words and you put it over there. You break off half of the words there. And, what happens if you lose a piece of that? So this is kind of like a centralization, decentralization sort of thing. I don't know if any of you guys have really thought about even these kinds of things, right? Where you keep all of your passwords, how centralized that is. Have you thought about that for even your Web 2 identities?
One time I looked into a service that you essentially provide them all this information, and if you don't check in with them when they contact you, they assume that you've passed, and they send it to a designated person.
Oh, whoa, that's intense.
But it was intense, but it was also very scary for one. If I miss a check-in, I'm sure they have very good precautions in place for that, but also just one entity having all my information scared me. Yeah, wow, that's wild. Yeah, the check-in is really important. What if you're on vacation or something? There's it doesn't matter. An ultra responsible person. I don't think it's for anybody who might miss that.
That's so crazy. Yeah. Wow. Oh, it's an email. Okay.
I think so, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. I want to pick your brain. I actually am curious what that service is, because I'm that seems very gung ho, but right? I could totally see it. When you watch, there's that TV show on Netflix of world's most secure homes. You ever see that? They have those shows on Netflix or whatever streaming service. It's these people who are just hyper paranoid about their kids getting kidnapped by the cartel or something, and their houses are just everything is there's a titanium door, basically. Yeah. Yeah, it's a funny show. I can't remember. I can think of it on the top of my head, but so that's something that we'll think about. It's going to be something that's going to be a part of constructing this later, but we'll just kind of think about it for now. But it's 24 words, 12 words sometimes. It's actually there's a range of words that it can be in between. There's a standard that it follows. BIP 39 is the most common one, but you don't really need to know that. So that's something that we need to think about. We'll go into BIP 39 will be useful for talking about longevity, I think. And longevity is the next row here. It's just another, arbitrary category that I picked as I was kind of thinking through some of the considerations that I would think through. So the first one is, what if we often keep our keys in things, right? Storage mediums, whether it's a hardware wallet, a ledger, a Trezor, your phone, or it's just sitting in your browser or something, or on your laptop, for example. These things are subject to physical damage, and they can be dropped. Accidents can happen. There can be a force majeure, a flood, a fire, earthquake, a typhoon, something like that. You could be living in Tonga and a volcano explodes and whoop, there goes Tonga, and all of your private keys along with it. So another consideration is the physical medium that you're storing your thing in. How are you going to mitigate against the risk of it being damaged by an accident that is beyond your control? And these things happen, like floods happen, bank deposit boxes get flooded, fires happen in buildings, and if you're storing something at your house or your apartment, in the event that you get evacuated, you can't quickly get to a safe or whatever, and the building burns down. What do you do about that? So longevity is kind of like it's an important part to think about, and specifically the physical medium that you're going to be keeping this thing in. Some people don't even use hardware wallets; they use paper, and like paper washes away. Paper burns, right? People think like paper wallets are like the most secure, but also like you never know. Some little bug creeps in there and just starts eating the paper. I have no idea, right? Paper just doesn't seem like the most secure thing for me personally. But some people do it. Okay, moving on. Another thing with hardware is hardware obsolescence. This kind of like this talk. Like your iPhone, basically, you have to upgrade your iPhone every year or whatever. That's kind of an extreme version, but we kind of change cables semi-frequently, right? USB-C is becoming more prevalent. That wasn't always the case. Lightning was being pushed for a while, but micro USBs, mini USB is becoming less and less common. And like, what if your ledger uses one of those things? I have a hard drive, right, that I literally cannot find a USB thing for. If I went out to go buy a cable, I could find it, but I don't have it physically at my house. And that's just like a small annoying version of this. Fast forward 50 years from now, what are they going to be using? Are they still going to have devices that have things that you can plug into? Is everything just going to be wireless? I have no idea, right? What do you do if you never planned for that future and you thought your ledger was going to be okay the whole time? You never wrote down your seed phrase anywhere, your private key rather, and you just assumed that whoever was going to get access to your drive was always going to be able to plug it into a computer. But it's the year is 2072 and everybody's just beaming files using their temples or something, right? Like, how do you, right?
I've never thought about this.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. So that's it's something that like, I know this just like now. I bought a new ledger. They use a different USB cable now for the ledger, right? When I had got my original ledger, this was 5 years ago. It's a regular USB cable, and it's just like I don't have them laying around easily. I have to like go digging for that, and then at that point, I'm just like I don't want to deal with this thing anymore. So that's just
this USB-C now, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's annoying that it's USB-C to USB-A.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Especially with if you're a MacBook user, right? You got to have the dongle. So that's another thing is like, have you thought about putting the dongle with your security recovery pack? Have you considered like, I need to have the right dongle so that somebody can use this? It's kind of nutty to think about, but like this is part of, we live in a society. It's a crypto society now. You got to think about these things. So
even just like the security risk of having a dongle.
Yeah.
In the intermediary step of the hardware.
Oh, totally.
About that earlier. It's just Like, what if like someone just writes some like malicious like dongles?
Totally.
Extract the kit.
Yeah, 100%. That's not an uncommon thing, like keyloggers, right? Like little USB keyloggers. People have them, and it's a thing. Yeah. So if everything requires a dongle and you got to plug things that you never, most people are buying their dongles from like Amazon, which is coming from like iBuy China, whatever. And like, you don't really know where your third party peripherals are coming unless you buy OEM, right? And even at that, it's never guaranteed. So something to think about, right? Okay. The other thing is just regular obsolescence, which is like hard drives fail. Spinning disk hard drives, especially, right? They have a shelf life, and if you keep something on something that spins, and an earthquake, you live in California, there's an earthquake, whatever, it gets shaken up a little bit. Next thing you know, you plug it in, it's corrupted, right? So the quality of the media matters too, right? It's I don't think it would be advisable to recommend anything really that's like not flash or solid state for something like this. If you were to keep your security, if that was a part of your security apparatus. So in what ways are your mediums susceptible to mechanical failures? It's another thing you got to think about. Okay. So I think the point is made with the longevity stuff. Any questions or other comments on that? Okay, cool. So moving on to like kind of more the fleshy, squishy layer, less so the mechanical stuff. Trust. So obviously this is going to require some kind of social element to it, some trust element to it, because again, we're kind of starting from the assumption of like, oh, the worst case has happened. I'm no longer around to come and deal with this, to come recover my stuff. Who is going to do it? And because we're dealing with private keys, and because we're dealing with fundamentally your identity in Web3, it can't just be anyone. And even more, that person needs to be competent, because if they can't figure out, they can't give it to someone else because that you don't trust, right? So we got to think about who's going to be the person, the human element in your security system that you are going to trust in the event that something blows up, or you're not around, and they have to be kind of like the person who goes through your files and figures out how to recover your stuff. This has got to be somebody that you would literally trust with your life, because that's basically what we're talking about here, fundamentally. Yeah. And I don't have good heuristics for this. Maybe that's, another topic of what is trust? How do you form it with people? Like that's a whole nother Mochi Magic workshop session, but we're going to have to think about who that person will be for you, or persons, if you want to make it even more complex. But I think more people there's just a lot of room for error there. But, so who is your trusted party? And can you count on them to do the technical stuff? Again, like, if you have to sit there and explain it to them, are they going to get it enough to the point where they could recreate the steps if you were not there? And how do you guarantee that? Can you guarantee it? Arguably no, but you can get it to reasonable assurance that they can be relied upon. And the way that you do it is you teach them. They have to be able to learn how to do this stuff. And I think ultimately, unless we move to a model where, this is no longer custodial crypto and banks kind of just own crypto again, and I don't know, we're going to have to learn this stuff. At least I want people in Mochi to know this stuff, because, that's what this is about. I'm not trying to go back to that world. I'm trying to, the self-sovereignty element of crypto is very important, I think, to the grand experiment, and to me personally. So it's important to me that Mochi people learn how to do this stuff. So if you can learn, the person that you trust should be able to learn what you know. You need to be able to teach them and walk them through your steps. That's assuming that you can fully trust this person. It's never 100%, right? So the next thing is, if 100% full trust is not possible, what can you do to mitigate the risk of theft or loss? Again, this is going to be like the splitting thing. But every time you split, it's going to be more complex. There's a lot of room for error. People can lose things. People forget things. Things get damaged, so on and so forth. I think you get the point. But trust is a tricky thing to work with. Kind of going back to when people were talking about this crypto stuff and how they were like how we were like colloquially speaking about it amongst, very early, really rampant crypto anarchist style thinkers and whatever. This trust list meme was dominant. It was like, don't trust anyone, fully trustless computing, never trust is a bad thing. Verify, don't trust, that kind of thing. It's a tricky thing. So I'm not as much of an extremist in this case. You need to be able to trust people. I think that's the kind of society I want to live in. So absent being able to control people 100%, you need to be able to create steps that mitigate against potential risks. So we'll think about that once we get there, but another thing to kind of keep in mind. All right. We should be able to kind of blow through these last couple of things. If I don't want to bore you guys with some of these considerations, but hopefully they're somewhat helpful. Another dimension is kind of like, I'm calling it impact, but it's also risk, right? So we're kind of like starting to play with this idea of risk in the trust realm. But I kind of want to try and encourage you guys to think about possibly even measuring. Well, we're working with money here. So you have I think, innate sense of how this will impact you if you were to lose some money, right? What is the impact if you lost all of it in a hack, in an accident, if you passed away? How would it affect you personally, right? This is something that Alex and I have gone through, very recently, right? Like with what happened with the Mochi contract, very unexpected, big shock. I think for most people might be a killer blow, right? To lose, I don't know, I can't remember what it was, like 140, 50K at the time, right? Just like gone. There's nothing we can do to get it back, save for like maybe some, street justice vigilantes going and trying to find who this person is. It's just, once it's gone, it's gone. And what are you going to do about it? And when that happens, which is all the more reason to think about this stuff now, because if you can't afford it, if it's a big portion of your war chest, which for some people, crypto, it's everything. What are you going to do if it goes? How much is it going to impact you? And more importantly, how is it going to affect the people you care about? Right. And that's kind of like the driving, I think, force and impetus behind this talk. And I guess why Maggie was yelling at me that one day, which is you got to think about your family. You got to think about, I'm at an age now, I'm not that old, but I'm, old enough to know that, my family would be impacted 100%. If they couldn't access my funds, if I passed away, they're, not reliant on me, but to an extent, it would be a big blow, I think, to our family security if I fell off the face of the earth one day, or not even that, just my bike. My motorcycle is my main mode of transport. Perhaps stupidly, trying to run a company and having crypto and stuff. Maybe that's dumb, which is. Maybe I'm convincing myself to buy a car right now, but anyways, it's like, it's something that we should, you should think about. I'm not going to ask you guys how much crypto you have or whatever, but are you interested in this at all? Because you feel like it would be a pretty big blow if if say that you didn't start thinking about these things now.
Like there'll be like nothing for my family to access in the way that I like keep my phone, like if I do this, because of like how I like distribute between beyond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's also like a spectrum because like even if it's hard to know like how much any of these resources or things that we've been acquiring over the years like will be worth at some point in the future, regardless of how much they are now. So I think it's just important to keep that in mind, that they're assets and like should be safeguarded in some way.
Yep.
Even if it's not like even if you're not like a massive like ETH whale, like in perspective, like it's still very early. So
100%. Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. Yeah, you don't really know. You could be that guy that's diving in dumpsters one day because you had some ETH dust sitting in a hard drive that you can't unlock anymore. So yeah, good to think about it now. And if you can mitigate some risks, if you can set yourself up for some secure success, I think it's a good price to pay now because you don't want to pay it later. It's an expensive lesson for me with that contract thing. But now the lesson is learned, and you try and do a better job next time. So the last thing here that I'll mention very briefly is privacy. So security and privacy are functionally a bit different. And the one thing that I put for privacy here is, how important is it to you that your transactions or your Web3 identities ultimately are private? There's an element of that to crypto that I think some people care about, others don't. For some people, this is about a relentless pursuit of freedom from any kind of overpowering governments or something like that. For some people, this is just a way for them to make some spare cash and whatever. But privacy is something that has very tangible economic consequences, depending on where you sit on the spectrum of I care about privacy versus I don't when it comes to financial considerations with crypto. We do live and work in a space now where the ledger is public. You can see people's transactions. If you're bidding on an NFT, maybe you've done this. Let me know if you've done this. Have you ever bid on an NFT against somebody and then checked out their wallet to see what they got going on in there? 100%. Yeah, this is the world we live in, right? Financial privacy is less of it's more of a luxury now than it is guaranteed by any kind of thing. And not that we really had it in Web 2, but I could see when you're paying Janie for tacos or something like that on Venmo, but that's not the same thing as like knowing how much ETH you have in your wallet, so I can move more ETH in there, so I can outbid you and know that you're not going to outbid me. That kind of game. Totally different thing. And that's just kind of like a silly example of like where privacy might matter, but like privacy has tax consequences, right? We're coming out of an era where financial secrecy amongst elites, in air quotes, right, is like is taboo, and I think has always been taboo. But like just like the scale and breadth and depth of the exploitation of global markets by those who could access or had the relevant knowledge to do so, has come to light, and maybe that's an element of your decision-making matrix. Wherever you sit on that spectrum, it's something worth thinking about because it has economic consequences. Even if you sit on the spectrum of you follow the letter of the law to a T, you view tax as a duty to keeping a well-managed and orderly society, which is sensible and it's a very reasonable belief. That comes with consequences because the laws that were made for our existing financial system, quite frankly, just don't really fit very well. The glove doesn't really seem to fit on a lot of the things that are getting developed in crypto. If you make the decision with your financial advisor or your accountant to treat certain things in certain ways, you're going to get nailed if you're sitting around anytime this past year, just moving things around, experimenting as somebody who's like working in the space, innovating, not necessarily investing. You're going to eat a lot of, anyways, I don't think I need to go into that further. Privacy is something that should be somewhere in this decision-making matrix for you. And that's why it's there. Questions about that before I go into like just the two things that like, these are like more reminders and like very hard, like stringent reminders. That's why they're in red.
No other questions about the other stuff? These seem to be self-explanatory too.
Yeah. I'll just say it out loud because it's valuable and worth being said out loud. Never, ever, ever share your private key with anybody. As soon as they have it, it's done. Like, it's like it's worse than having your social security number. It's worse than having the password to your burner account or whatever. Like they have your bank account. They have the keys to the Ferrari. They're going and they're never coming back. So never share your private key. And when you are creating instructions for somebody who will be managing your things, understand that the second that they get their hands on it, you cannot unsee. They can copy and paste that. And once they're copying and pasting, it's things compromised. You got to get rid of your wallet immediately. And if somebody else sees it, right? So that's one thing, trust. It needs to be baked into how you construct your securities or your recovery system. And then another thing is I don't know if I marked this top right, ease of access, minimize the amount of, yeah. So actually, yeah. So get back to the hot wallet, cold wallet thing. Oh, what's up, A? What's up, Janie? Nice to see you.
Hi. What is this? What's happening right now? Sorry.
So we were talking about making a crypto resurrection plan, which is like a crypto recovery plan. Like, what do you do if you fell off the face of the earth? How does your mom get access to your crypto? Cool. That kind of thing.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah. Through a magical lens, an alchemical approach to conjuring your crypto recovery system with the elements. And that's why we're doing colorful blocks here. It kind of looks like an elemental chart that it doesn't really make sense. So I explained at the very beginning of this, I was like kind of coming up with the idea as I was making it. So I'll have to come back to this. We'll do a couple sessions and the colors will one day make sense, I think, or at least I'll have a legend so that you understand what they mean. But right now the colors, it's like, whose line is it anyway? Like the colors don't matter. The points are just the game's just for fun or whatever. But anyways, the last point is talking about this concept of hot wallet, cold wallet. Hot wallets are wallets that like you're using constantly. You're buying NFTs with them. You're like swapping things and you're sending some money to friends or whatever. I think we get into the habit because MetaMask is used so widely in the crypto space that you just leave everything in MetaMask. And like next thing you know, you just have like all these accounts and like they all have a bunch of ETH and like some of them have a ton of ETH and like, what do you do? It's you get comfortable with the wallet in the browser kind of thing, which is not a good thing to get comfortable with. Case in point, there are expert people that make mistakes, all the time with clicking some button that they think is safe and opening their wallet to, you hear about some, 100 APY thing. Next thing you know, you're aping into this thing. You click sign to unlock 100% access to like certain tokens in your wallet. Next thing you know, it's a rug pull. And like, not only that, they're malicious, right? This happens to people. This happened to Ryan Selkis, 2-Bit Idiot, who, maybe you have your opinions about his kind of like political leanings, but from a financial standpoint is pretty spot on about a lot of things that are happening, at least on the kind of like the nuts and bolts about like the financial elements of like what's going on with Bitcoin and Ethereum. He suffered a hack from his MetaMask, couldn't figure it out, but one of his MetaMask accounts just got drained. Has no idea how it happened. I don't know if he ever came out with a postmortem about it, but I just remember seeing his thing and he's like, the best he can say is like, I'm always careful. I don't know what happened, whatever. And this comes from the bull rushy kind of like habits that you get, the bad habits you get in a bull rush market where you're just trying to ape because, if you ape too late, you're not going to catch the uptick. And you just get into the habit of signing transactions, putting money in places. Next thing you know, you sign some wary thing, you're not paying attention, and then boom, your money's gone. So minimize to the extent that you can the amount of crypto that you have in your MetaMask wallet. It's just going to be better for everything. And another thing too, I don't know if people know this, but the seed phrase you have in your MetaMask, you know how you can create multiple accounts, right? You can create multiple accounts with that seed phrase, and those are all derived from the same that same phrase. So the second somebody gets that seed phrase, or you type that into the wrong place, they have all of those accounts. They don't just have the one that's at the top; they have all of them. Even though they have different private keys, all those private keys are derived from that first seed phrase. So you lose one, you lose the whole thing. And if you sit and all of your crypto accounts are just MetaMask, like they're it's just going down the list of that little MetaMask plugin, you are putting yourself at risk because you have now centralized a bunch of your identities onto a single seed phrase. So again, minimize the amount of money you're keeping on your MetaMask, and just be very wary of that. Where you type seed phrases, anywhere you type seed phrases, just be very, very careful. So that's just another big reminder worth mentioning. Okay. So these are the considerations I came up with. I think there are more. I don't know. I slept 2 hours last night. I couldn't think of everything. These are just the things that I think about, but hopefully they were lucid. Hopefully some of them were things that you are already paying attention to. And maybe there were some that you've never thought about before. And I think there was one, so that's good. So these are always going to be in the back of your mind. Now, that's going to be the first step. Again, kind of going down to this little chart here, which for the folks who just joined, the order doesn't really make sense. The way that you read this, and I'll annotate this for the next time we get together to talk about how we actually construct this. You read it left to right first. So starting from the very top left, consider. Consider is what we just did. We went through all the blocks on the left, going through the considerations that should make it into before you even go about constructing something to recover your crypto. You read it left to right. The next thing that we're going to do is take inventory of stuff, and that's going to be the next stage up top. But once we get to the end of this first row, I think we'll just call it for a day, and then we can move on to the next one afterwards. Sound good? Okay. If you have any questions, just shout it out or put it in the chat. I have the chat working on my other computer. So this next section here is all about. I feel like I'm missing a column here. Like I don't know where it went. No, I think it's fine. Anyway, so this next section is again, the colors don't really make sense. I was just trying to kind of lump things where I felt like there was a categorical similarity. And you'll see that the headers are kind of like roughly hardware, software, paperware. But what I want to go through next is once you've gone through the considerations of like, okay, why am I constructing a recovery plan? What are the things I need to think about in terms of risks? Who are the people I need to trust? Where am I going to put certain things? You have to then take account of, well, what is it that you're actually trying to protect? What is it that you're actually trying to recover in the case that you fall off a motorcycle or you become incapacitated, something like that? These are the things that I was kind of just going through, what I remember when I was going through my stuff, of things that have value, things that I consider assets, and not only those things, but thank you. Yeah, I'll share this out afterwards. The recording will be available, and this is going to be a multi-part series, so hopefully you can join the next one. So not only the things that constitute our identities in a Web 2 and Web 3 context, but also where they live. That's also another thing that you need to consider, because again, in Web 3, they're mostly living in things that are in our possession and in our control. Web 2, not so much, but those are still assets, and you maybe want to hang on to them because, well, I don't know. You might have your own reasons. Maybe you have, variety of things that are valuable. Maybe your social account is valuable, and you want your family to get that. So we'll start at the top. And again, there's no rhyme or reason. It just kind of looks neat because it's cascading downwards ever longer. But we'll start with the paperware stuff. So maybe you have a paper wallet. And this is just a wallet that contains public address, the private keys like printed on there or written on there. Some people think that this is very secure. It's secure from a standpoint of it never touches the internet. 100%. Totally insecure from the standpoint that paper burns, it shreds, it gets wet, so on and so forth. Need I say more? But it might be part of your assets. Make sure you just take note of it. So the point of this again is like when we construct when we design and construct the security system later, we're hopefully going to be able to use these kind of like as stickies. You can take this, if you have it, drag it over, type the things that you have in here. So if you have a paper wallet, drag the block over. This is an element for your security alchemy, your recovery alchemy. Type all the paper wallets that you have in here. Don't share that with anybody, obviously, but like it's just a way for us to kind of take a block. I know I have this thing. Let's add it to the mix. So paper wallets might be one of those things. Another thing might be this is actually really important. Contracts, wills, and the safes that those papers live in. So this is something that's worth considering if you have a situation where like all the assets should be like you have an idea that your assets should be going to some group of people or dispersed equally amongst a group of people, or it should be more should be going to one person or whatever. If you have an idea about that, you might want to consider getting a will or a contract or a trust made in the event of something untimely happening. This is something that I considered and then ended up doing because I think it makes sense. I'll tell you, it's a weird process. It's totally such a strange thing to like think about who gets what when you pass. It's a very weird thing to think about at 30, because it's like it's not usually something that is ever really in your consciousness, like that you're going to die. We mostly live our lives thinking that we're invincible to an extent. Like you're going to die, but like it's not until you actually have to like ration out your record collection or something that you really think about like, yeah, people do this. It's the thing. So a will is a very powerful document in that the person that you trust in that trust phase doesn't have to be, but can be the person who gets the will and is the executor of the will. They could also just be the person that finds it and brings it to the executor. Again, totally up to you how you want to construct it. Everybody has a different relationships of trust with their family, with their friends, so on and so forth. So it can be a family member. It doesn't have to be a family member. But a lawyer will probably have a better insight into what you need to consider for this. So I'll just mention it, but it's paperware, right? This is going to make it into the larger system. So think about it if you want it. Next row is hardware. So this is like mostly, again, from a crypto standpoint, like we're mostly thinking about techie hard stuff or techie software stuff. But let's start with hardware. So your laptop, your desktop computer, if your passwords, your recovery files, your backup, secure backup notes, anything like that lives on your laptop and desktop, you're going to have to drag this block over because you got to figure out how you're going to deal with that. How does somebody log into your computer if they need to access something onto it? That's usually going to be the first thing people think about when they need to do any kind of recovery for you. That or your phone, which is why that's the next thing, right? How does somebody get into your phone? I don't know. I don't want to misspeak because this is going to be like recorded and out, on YouTube or something. Are there backdoors for like hardware companies in the event of like a death and somebody needs to get in? I know there are for software, but for like a phone, like an iPhone, do you guys know?
I know that like there's like on the iPhone like car crash. There's now some fill out that law enforcement do it and like put organ donor.
That's interesting.
I know there's a lot lot of controversy when Apple pushed back against, I forget what shooting it was that happened, but the person that was behind that, I guess they got access to his phone and they were trying to get Apple to backdoor the phone, and Apple refused to do it.
I see. Yeah, that's yeah, it's tricky. It's one of those like damned if you do, damned if you don't situations. Yeah, so okay. Well, it's a thing, right? I don't know if you guys keep a backup of your PIN somewhere, or something like that. Maybe you don't even use pins. Maybe you just use facial unlock or whatever. So I don't know. It's something that you got to consider in case there's something on your phone. Maybe you store stuff on your phone. I don't know. Don't tell me if you do. That's the other thing about security. It's like don't ever tell. I don't think I mentioned that. Don't tell people what your security plan is unless they're part of the plan. Did I say that? Wow. This is like the most important thing. I totally missed this. I need to make a block. I'm going to make a block at the end of this. Don't ever reveal your security plan to anybody because things change, and you never know what could happen with somebody having your information. That's why it's another reason why I'm taking this approach. Is just like, I would rather how to construct your own thing and do it your own way, and make it make sense to you, and just don't ever tell me, because you might trust me now. You never know. I could be like Severus Snape. It's not until the end if you know he's a good guy or bad guy. It could be that kind of situation. You just never know.
Something, because
yeah.
Earlier when you were talking about essentially like access and like figuring out the place. That was like really good idea, even though.
Is Niche breaking up for anybody else or just me?
Yeah, I can't really hear.
I'm getting like I'm getting like a couple words and then you cut out.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. You want to repeat? Yeah.
I was saying, I'm glad you brought up Snape, because earlier when you were talking like distributing security, I kept thinking about Voldemort. And I was like, that was really smart of him, actually. Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah, there's an element of this that's kind of like Defense of the Dark Arts style Mochi magic. I was considering calling it that at one point. There's certain people in the club that have access to like my notes of like all my crazy thoughts and ideas about like what we could do as a group together. And like there was literally a section called Defense Against the Dark Arts, and I think this was like probably a topic at one point, but now it's happening. It's called Mochi Magic, so it's not as dark. But there's an element of this which is like you got to keep this dark. You don't want people to know what you're really doing down here, because if they know, then you are at risk, and you have to mitigate that somehow. You have to work that into your chamber of secrets. There you go. This is a chamber of secrets of one. You should be the only person that has access to that chamber of secrets. Okay, so everybody has a mobile phone. Everybody here has a laptop. Maybe not everybody has a hardware wallet. You should consider getting one if you don't have one, because they're good devices. The only caveat being this like hardware obsolescence thing. But ledgers are good devices. They work with the pace or with what's kind of going on with innovation now. I've tried it with L2 stuff. It works. It works with dApps, and there's ways to kind of connect it, even if like the base app doesn't work all the time. So hardware wallets are good because they don't ever pass your keys over. The signing, the draw for them is the signing happens on the device. The signing doesn't happen. It broadcasts the signature. It doesn't broadcast your keys. Whereas I think in like MetaMask is the key. Your keys are in your browser, which I don't really know what that means, but I guess the extra layer of security is that this device is not really touching whatever is going on in whatever it's connected to. So, and you have to do PIN codes, passcodes as an extra layer of security on your hardware wallet. So it's a good device to have. It's a good device to have for code storage as well. Again, those two things are not the same thing, but they can. A hardware wallet can be used for cold storage. Not all cold storage has to be a hardware wallet, if that makes sense. It's one of those, like, it doesn't go the other way. Next thing, there are tools that are hardware that allow you to secure your seeds in a kind of decentralized way. And what I was planning on doing was actually dropping kind of like the logos or at least links to these things. There is a device that I found out about from going to actually one of Maggie's sessions. She did a session with a crypto kind of like securities consultancy where they recommended this device called Crypto Steel. Have you guys heard of this? Yeah. Oh, you've heard about it, Alex? So Nish, it's basically it's a device that's fireproof, waterproof. Like it mitigates all those things that we talked about. The kind of force majeure style things, and you can securely store either your entire seed phrase in one or a part of it. You could break up your seed phrase and put just a part in it, and you can have multiple of them, and you can store them in different places. So this is an interesting way to kind of think about, okay, if you don't want to have everything centralized, how might you split it up? This is a device that you're going to want to think about. And I'll include that in the later talk that we do. And then there's kind of like the traditional stuff. Banks, bank safety deposit at the bank, safes, locks, keys, actual physical keys, right? These are all hardware things that you can implement into your, maybe you have one of these already and you want to work it into your thing. We'll drag the box over, the element over later on, next time we meet. Okay, that's hardware stuff. Software stuff. Browser wallets. You're familiar? Oh, go ahead.
One more thing with the hard storage, like Crypto Steel and stuff. There's this guy, Jameson Watt, that did like a review of like all the different products on the market, and did like pretty good like write up on everything of like how like robust those were to ease of use, all that stuff. I'll try to find a link to it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think this should be editable. If it's not, let me know. But if you have that, just drop it in here. I'll figure out a place to put it. But hopefully this can become a shared resource. There was one thing too I missed. Hard drive disks, solid states, flash drives. You might use these things for security. Maybe you already do this. Maybe you encrypt files and you like put them onto hardware. If you niche, I'm sure you have hundreds of hard drives because it's just kind of it's part of your tool set. So maybe this is somewhere you store some things. Something worth considering. Software. Sorry, did you have a question? Comment? Nope. Okay, cool. So software, these ones probably more familiar with everybody. So browser wallets, that's like your MetaMask wallet, that's your Portis, that is Opera has a crypto browser wallet now. Brave, you know what that is. Mobile wallets, same thing. MetaMask has a mobile wallet. Rainbow, Trust, Bread. There's all kinds of these, right? Don't forget one. Maybe you forgot that you downloaded a wallet way back when, and it's got some Bitcoin sitting on there, and you forgot about it. Check your phone. It's another reason why people need to be able to get in your phone. The other reason people need to be able to get in your phone is because a lot of 2FA stuff, right? Raise your invisible hand if you've ever used Google Authenticator on something and like messed up your phone or lost your phone and didn't have access to those codes to get your 2FA authenticator working again, and you're locked out of your stuff for like several days, right? Or you don't use Authenticator and you just use text message recovery and you can't even get access to that to get into your account. So, mobile phones are very, very important about the thing about this. And then mobile wallets, Same deal, right? Maybe you don't use MetaMask. Maybe you use Wallet Connect and you use one of your wallets that's on your phone. You should know about that if you do. So take note of all of those if you have them. Key stores. This one is becoming less common. This was more common back in the early days when there was no other way to generate, no other easy way to generate your accounts. You're like generating new generating new wallets on something like my Ether wallet, for example, or some other kind of janky site like that. No longer a thing that you want to really rely on. And if you have them, you should probably deprecate them. You should probably get all your crypto out of those things. It's another one of those things that, you never know with software obsolescence if you're going to be able to load this up and get into it again. I think they're just JSONs, if I'm not mistaken. I can't even remember because like it's been so long since I've actually used one. But if you're an OG crypto head, you might have some of these laying around. Make sure you just take note of them. And there's no dust sitting around that you're going to be upset about if you delete one day. Email addresses. This is Web 2. Your email addresses are your identity now, and really your password is your identity. But like your email address is the thing that you use to access in so many places, right? Google, log in with Google, log in with Facebook, log in with Twitter. Increasingly common now. Log in with Discord. Your email address is the key for all of these things, and to a lot of your life, really. So you're going to want to, when we're going through this in the next one, right? We're going to have to take note of where all the email addresses are, what's associated with them, if anything is valuable associated with them, what do they connect to? Same thing with social accounts, right? That's kind of just like downstream from your email address. And then credit cards, another form of identity. And I didn't really put social security here. Maybe I should just put that here. This is kind of like the list of TradFi things. Social security, maybe you have stonks, stuff like that live in just the ether, the Web 2 ether. You don't want, maybe you invest quite a bit in, see you, Myra, enjoy the sunset, or the post sunset. So obviously, don't lose your credit cards, don't give them out, and you should be keeping them in a secure place. The wallet may be that, but maybe is not oftentimes actually. And, the last row is also software. And is not really about identity. It's more about where identity lives and more about where and some of these security things live and how you might recover them in the event that you don't get access to them, or how you might secure them as well. And I should probably separate those things out because they're kind of different. This needs a little bit of work, but just bear with me as we go through it. So password managers, if you don't use one, I'm curious why not. Does everybody here use a password manager? Also, what's up, Laura? I see you here. I see you there being quiet listening. Just soaking in knowledge.
Yeah, I use one.
Cool. Okay, good. So we all use password managers. The one thing that I would be a little bit cautious about is like, I think I can be guilty of this, is that I use it too much, maybe. Centralization on your password manager is also a security risk. Keep that in mind. If you have one password to unlock all your passwords, it's kind of the same thing as like the MetaMask problem, right? If somebody has the one password, it's kind of, that's it. So anyways, reliance on this can be somewhat tricky, but I still do recommend them. I use them. It's just a better way to do things. Also, they give you more secure passwords. Another thing that I'm going to write these down now, because I don't want to forget them. They're important. So don't ever tell people what your security scheme is. See you, Alex. Good to see you. Thanks for coming by, and hope this was helpful. Share the recording later.
All right. See you later.
Ciao. Don't ever tell people what your security thing is. And then what was the other thing that I was about to say? don't. Shoot, I lost it. Anyways, if it comes back, I'll write it down. But yeah, don't ever tell people what your security scheme is. Password managers, need to be careful with them. Yeah, I lost that thought. Anyways, moving on. Maybe you encrypt your keys, which is another way of securing stuff. Like it's adding a layer of security, but again, you're dealing with passwords. Oh, I remember it. Don't ever make up your own passwords. I don't know if you guys still do this, but if it's like a bad habit that I don't know. We just have from, I think, being early people of the internet, maybe. Don't ever make up your own passwords, especially if you use a password manager. There's no reason to. Just use the password manager. One, make sure it's sufficiently long and complex. We're just bad at generating entropy. We think we're random, but we're not. You think that like the thing popping in your, it's really just something that was kind of more, that was not so far away present. And the domain of which that we pull out of is not a very mixed or large or deep domain when we come up with passwords. And somebody who's sitting there with a bot farm that can just like generate, billions of passwords and it's just like try to brute force your thing. You're just better off not trying to even come up with something. And reusing passwords is another bad habit that you can break if you have a password manager, because they're really good at suggesting really random, long, complex passwords that in theory should never be able to get broken unless quantum computers become a thing in the next, I don't know. I don't really know what happens in quantum physics or theory or science or computing even. But it's a risk, right? But so and all the more reason to not make up your own passwords. You might encrypt your keys or encrypt things that contain your keys with archives that use passwords. That's a safe thing, or it adds a layer of security to your mix. But don't forget those things. Maybe you have weird naming schemes, or you try to name things in a sneaky way, right? As we're going through the inventory, don't forget the one-off file that contains some, spooky videos or pictures or whatever it is that you hide in your archives. Remote servers, this could be, it's not a server or computer that you have locally. Maybe you rent out a server, you have a VPS. Maybe you have, Google Drive counts for this, right? That's a remote server that a lot of people use. Maybe you have some files there that are valuable, that people need to access. Not a good place to put passwords, not a good place to put private keys, but, maybe you have an encrypted folder, encrypted, compressed, file that you put on there that can be shielded with the key. Don't forget those things. And then I'll just jump ahead to this last one just because categorically it makes more sense. Oops. Online banking accounts, payment apps, touchless payments, these kinds of things. I'm assuming these things more or less live behind some kind of security, either on your phone if you're doing the touchless thing, or behind your OnePass stuff, or your LastPass stuff, whatever it is that you use. I would also, another thing about the password managers, I would also recommend not using the ones that are on the browser, because I don't know if you know how easy it is actually to access those passwords, but it's a couple clicks if you know how to search for it and your computer's up and, somebody's feeling malicious. One thing they could do is change your Facebook status. The other thing they could do is just take your passwords and do it later, or worse things later. So I wouldn't recommend using passwords that the browser, like Chrome, gives you or whatever. Use your password manager stuff. These last two things, encryption tools and recovery tools, we should probably go through this later. We're already a little bit over, and we started kind of late, so we'll just end this after talking about this stuff, and we can kind of leave this off for next time. But there are tools that you can use that are a little bit more advanced but you will learn more about how public key, private key encryption infrastructure works. It will teach you kind of this like hackery kind of like, leet thing that you can use to privatize your messages, encrypt your messages so that only specific people can read them. Not only that, given that both of you guys are members, you should have received in your box a special key. That is a special key that you can use to sign encrypted messages using these tools. It's extra. It's a step beyond. It's like if you're hyper secure, you're hyper paranoid about security, you're Edward Snowden, you're a journalist that's doing subversive stuff in a non-journalist friendly country. You're encrypting your stuff using some of these tools, and we can do a session just on that alone because it's kind of involved and heady, and it's going to be kind of like I don't think either of you were on the session of like how to set up your node on E2, but it's going to involve some command line stuff. It's going to involve installing some software that doesn't look pretty, but it will give you another layer of security that you can use as a part of your recovery system. So that's the encryption tool. And then the recovery tool that I will share, and we don't need to go through this now, is, I don't know if Laura, you were here for this part, but we were talking about this idea of obsolescence in technology. We may come to a point somewhere down the line, 50 years from now, where nobody uses USB cables, and like your ledger has a USB, C cable or something, and like you have nowhere to plug it in. It's like, how do you get your crypto off of it? That's a risk that is not a major risk, but like, let's just call it a risk. So how do you get your crypto if like you can't access the physical device, or the physical device has been damaged, but you have access to the private key somewhere else? There are tools that you can use that are online that you can download offline so that they're secure and you're not using it where it's touching the internet and you're potentially revealing your keys. That you can input seed phrases to use to derive any private key that belongs to that that particular seed phrase. That's in theory, because it's just math and it's a standard, should work from now until the end of time, so long as we use browsers, which is also kind of like a risk, I guess, if, this all becomes VR land and we're just in the Matrix or Ready Player One or whatever. Maybe that's a risk. But so long as we use browsers, you can use this tool. You don't even need internet to get access to your key. And even if that were to fail, so long as that knowledge out there lives on, that like BIP39 is a standard and it uses this kind of math to derive certain things from certain phrases, you could theoretically do it by hand. Not that that's the best way to do it, but in theory, you could find somebody who can figure this out for you. So you kind of need to have these fail safes if you want to be fully 100% cover all your bases. We can go through that again at another time. It's beyond the scope of this, and we've already gone over time. So thank you for your patience and bearing with me and kind of staring at this pretty but nonsensical elemental chart of security alchemy. I don't know, something like that.